Now travel with me from the Arctic to South Carolina. We are going to visit Bidler Forest, an Audubon sanctuary that I call a sacred chamber. If you are in the area, it's worth a visit. My husband and I were driving up Interstate 26, northwest of Charleston, when we saw a sign for Audubon's Francis Bidler Forest. What's this? We swung off the interstate to investigate and were rewarded with a memorable wildlife sanctuary, which the Audubon Society calls the world's largest virgin cypress tupelo swamp forest. A pristine ecosystem untouched for millennia. We paid our fee and began walking the 1.75-mile boardwalk that took us into an ethereal world of 1,000-year-old cypress, standing like proud old women in long skirts, not about to be bowed by age. Not at all a marshy, messy swamp, as I had expected. Four Holes Swamp was filled with pristine-looking, transparent black water, colored by tannins from the breakdown of vegetation. It is a flooded forest, the water the color of coffee or black tea. We fell silent among occasional mellifluous songbird calls. We learned that Four Holes Swamp is part of a 45,000-acre chain of blackwater sloughs and lakes. Old growth Bidler Forest, untouched by axes and chainsaws, numbers 18,000 acres within the swamp. Slow-moving black water flows through it for 60 miles on its way to the Edisto River. Swollen bases help tupelo and cypress keep their footing. When roots live in mud, they need stabilization, especially when hurricanes strike. Botanists think that the bulbous bases may help them breathe and help anchor them. Even more interesting to me were the cypress and tupelo knees, protuberances that scientists haven't quite figured out. They may help with aeration and may help provide further stabilization. Scientists call the similar adaptation of the cypress and tupelo trees to their watery environment convergent evolution. Our walk through Bidler Forest was stunning in its beauty and heartbreaking when I think of its possible future. Bidler Forest. I felt I was walking back in time, although it was only yesterday. The hush was humbling. Everywhere, mirrors of tupelo knees, cypress spreading mighty skirts in tannin-blackened water, leaning as if today had not happened. We were tourists, there to see Four Hole Swamp. Not an attractive name, but compelling nonetheless. And beautiful it was, this swamp, which is nothing other than a flooded forest. A sign told us one bald cypress lived for 1,000 years, and I felt I was walking back in time, although it was only yesterday. We were tourists only, tourists tramping on a boardwalk through a world so haunted by tomorrow I could barely stand. My husband chronicled with his camera the red-bellied snake slithering over a fallen log. The turtle, glorious green, drenched in sun, the flat-footed water spider skittering between the boards, barred owls, the staring barred owl magnificent in her patience, all of them indifferent to us who barely breathed in their presence. We were tourists who stumbled upon a hidden chamber, independent of dawn and dusk, stunning in its grace and sufficient in its harmony. The Audubon Society describes Beidler as thriving and fragile. A 2014 Audubon study concludes that half of North American birds are threatened by climate change and loss of habitat. The work at Beidler includes providing shelter for birds as seas rise and weather patterns shift. These safe spots for birds, called climate strongholds, provide the appropriate habitat for them now and for species who may seek shelter there in the future. What can we as individuals do to help? Native plantings provide food for birds, save water, and fight climate change. My husband and I live in rural southwestern Michigan on a couple of acres. We discovered we can enter our zip code at audubon.org/native-plants to find a list of plants native to our area. Among those that we've planted are serviceberry. This is our 3-year-old serviceberry plant, and dogwood. The dogwood, when it bursts into bloom in early spring, brings enormous joy to our yard. I'm still seeing the serviceberry. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, this poem is called The Dogwood's New Day. And lest my talk is too much of a downer for you, remember this one, okay? Overnight, the dogwood bursts forth its light, white blossoms trembling under coverage of spruce. We walk to delight. We wake to delight that bloomed in the night. Yesterday, buds, shivering and tight, were stirred by hope, but not shaken loose. Overnight, the dogwood bursts forth its light. In the yard at dawn, he blooms into sight, a champion of the woodlands, not a recluse. We wake to delight that bloomed in the night. Let's go outside and fly your new kite, the one you designed like a flying goose. Overnight, the dogwood bursts forth its light. Spool her out easy, let her take flight. Unloop the noose. We wake to delight that bloomed in the night. Isn't she grand, winging to liberty's heights? Let her fly, put her to good use. Overnight, the dogwood bursts forth its light. We wake to delight that bloomed in the night.